Imagine you're dropped into an ancient city. So you don't know if you're in London, Algeria, or Syria, but within minutes, you know exactly where to find the marketplace, the courts, and the temples. You can do this because you're in the Roman Empire and every city works the same way. It's the ancient world's most successful franchise operation. But like any franchise, the business model had fatal flaws built into its foundation. So how did Rome pull this off? Start with the scale. The Roman Empire stretched from Britain to the Sahara Desert, from Spain to Armenia, spanning 3 continents and thousands of miles. Latin served as the administrative glue across the West, while Greek dominated the East. Both languages marked you as educated, as civilized as Roman. This wasn't just political control. Rome created a unified civilization where a merchant from Syria could conduct business in Spain using the same legal system, the same currency, the same basic assumptions about how society worked. No pre-modern empire had achieved anything like this level of integration. The question is, what made it possible? The answer lies in standardized urban planning. Roman cities followed a template, a kind of operating system for civilization. Walk into any Roman city and you'll find the same basic layout. A central forum for commerce and politics, temples arranged predictably, law courts in expected locations, aqueducts bringing fresh water. Consider 2 cities separated by 1,500 miles, Londinium in Britain and Timgad in Algeria. Both featured grid pattern streets. Both placed their marketplaces at the intersection of main roads. Both positioned temples and public buildings in identical relationships to each other. A Roman citizen could navigate either city instinctively. Right? This wasn't accident. It was deliberate policy that made the empire governable. Roman cities shared another remarkable feature. They were unwalled. This seems counterintuitive. Ancient cities typically needed fortifications, but Roman cities didn't need walls because the legions protected the frontiers. The Pax Romana, the Roman peace, meant that internal security was guaranteed. Cities could focus on commerce and culture rather than defense. This confidence had limits. Rome remained fundamentally a Mediterranean civilization. Officials stationed on the Danube frontier wrote home with contempt. The inhabitants lead the most miserable of lives, for they cultivate no olives and they drink no wine. Olive oil and wine weren't just food, they were markers of civilization itself. Regions without them were barely Roman at all. Religion provided another unifying force through tolerance, not enforcement. Roman polytheism allowed remarkable flexibility. A Roman could worship Jupiter on Monday, and the Egyptian goddess Isis on Tuesday without any contradiction. Foreign gods weren't suppressed, they were incorporated into an ever-expanding pantheon. And this was historically unusual. Most empires imposed religious conformity. Rome did the opposite, absorbing local deities and allowing conquered peoples to maintain their traditions. The system worked because polytheism assumes multiple gods exist. Adding more gods strengthened rather than threatened the system. There was one glaring exception to this tolerance, Christianity, which Rome uniquely persecuted. The reasons reveal something important about how Roman religion actually functioned. But this remarkable system had cracks in its foundation. 4 structural weaknesses were embedded in Rome's success from the beginning, not external threats, but internal contradictions that would compound over centuries. These weren't separate problems, right? They formed an interconnected system of stress that functioned adequately during stability, but became catastrophic during crisis. Understanding these weaknesses changes how we see everything that came next in Roman history. The first weakness, urban-rural drain. Roman cities were magnificent, but they were parasites. Wealth flowed from countryside to city with little reciprocity. Peasants paid taxes that funded urban amenities they never used. Grain shipments fed city populations while rural communities struggled, and the cities that made Rome impressive depended on extracting resources from populations that received minimal benefit in return. The second weakness, East-West imbalance. Despite Rome's Western origins, the eastern provinces were more prosperous, more urbanized, more commercially developed. The empire's economic center of gravity had shifted. The third weakness, size itself. The empire's vast extent was an asset during peace. More territory meant more resources, more trade, more tax revenue. But during crisis, that same size became unmanageable. Messages took weeks to travel from frontier to capital. Reinforcements couldn't reach threatened borders quickly. Defending thousands of miles of frontiers simultaneously was logistically impossible. What made Rome great during stability made it ungovernable during stress. The very scale that demonstrated Roman power would eventually overwhelm Roman administration. The fourth weakness proved most destabilizing: military dependency. The Roman army consumed half of all state revenue. 50% of the imperial budget went to paying, feeding, equipping, and housing soldiers. This created a dangerous dynamic. The army wasn't just a defense force, it was the empire's largest institution, its biggest employer, its most powerful political actor. By the 3rd century, soldiers realized something crucial. The same force that defended the empire could also control it. Armies learned they could make and unmake emperors. The institution meant to protect Rome became the institution that destabilized it. Military dependency transformed from administrative challenge to existential threat. These 4 weaknesses weren't independent failures, they reinforced each other in a destructive cycle. Urban extraction weakened the rural tax base, which pressured military funding. East-West imbalance complicated administration, which magnified size problems. Size demanded more military spending, which increased extraction from already strained regions. During stability, the system absorbed these stresses. During crisis, they compounded. The Roman Empire didn't fall because it was weak. It fell because the very systems that made it strong eventually turned against it. Success contained the seeds of failure. When you study Rome's decline, look for these 4 weaknesses manifesting. The fall wasn't sudden, it was the structural issues compounding over centuries. Rome's achievements were real, but they contained contradictions. Uniformity enabled scale, but created brittleness. Tolerance enabled diversity, but had limits. Military power enabled expansion, but created dependency. The franchise model that built history's most unified pre-modern civilization carried the flaws that would eventually unmake it.